I don't know, Seth. That old man said to stay on the main road. I can't even tell where we are anymore.
You've got to stay on the main road now, you hear? Stay on the main road.
And doesn't the Air Force use part of this as a gunnery range?
We're not lost and we're not at a gunnery range.
Oh, what was that? Ah! Watch out, there's some kind of animal in the road. Oh no, it looks like we're broken down in the middle of nowhere. We were just minding our own business, trying to check out a silver mine someone left us. And now this! How could it get any worse? That's just what the Carter family thought when they broke down right here with their station wagon and trailer back in 1977 in a classic, genre-changing film, the original Wes Craven, Hills Have Eyes. For 19 years, I have been looking for the spot they filmed the original Hills Have Eyes. And in 19 years, no amount of Googling, no amount of searching, no amount of asking people I know that work in the movie industry or in the horror biz has produced a solid lead on where that filming location was. But I am happy to say, after nearly 2 decades of searching, I have cracked it. And I am now standing on the very spot that the Carter family trailer came to rest, right in front of these rocky peaks. Now, if you remember the movie, after they break down right before the dad heads back to the gas station looking for help on foot, the family gathers and hunkers down to make a plan and have a little prayer together right in this very same spot. Notice how the rocks are identical to the way they were in 1977, and pay a special attention to the background. If you look just beyond that rocky bit there at the mountain behind, you'll notice in the movie that that little side bump there lines up just above the notch in the foreground rocks, just like it still does today. This is the exact spot. If you're not right here, that notch will move to the left or the right of that little bump. It won't line up perfectly. But thanks to lining up those mountains, these craggy hills behind me, and some of the peaks in the distance, we have discovered the exact location of the Carter family trailer from the Hills Have Eyes. There are a ton of off-roading trails out here. In the movie, actually, when the family is approaching this valley down the dirt road we came in on, the main dirt road, you can tell there's just barely any crossroads, barely any trails out here. Well, 43 years has done its work. And now this entire desert is littered with trails and streets, which are basically a little wider than the trails. Here's another slightly different angle, facing the same direction, where in the movie, Big Bob's head fills up the foreground, complaining about how he was shot at and using some gnarly language actually towards his wife, towards other races. Big Bob wasn't the most gentle or graceful guy. After all, they didn't call him Gentle Bob. Seth is now pulling the car a little more forward to better match the position of the station wagon and the trailer in the background. Obviously, a lot has changed out here. But if you pay attention to the shape of the ridgeline, where all the rocks are, where the road is, where the cars are, you can definitely tell this is the correct spot. We are in the right place. This is right where Big Bob was standing when he said, well, Dr. Springer can take his stethoscope and shove it into his little black bag.
Sideways.
Now, for just a movie about a family breaking down in the desert with a nice camper together and a couple of dogs, by the way, it would be fine. But unfortunately, as Brenda and Bobby, the two blonde kids in the family, start heading this way, Brenda gets that eerie, strange feeling, that overwhelming sensation that they're being watched. And here's the thing, Brenda was correct. Notice though, I'm pretty sure that bush is the exact same bush behind Brenda. That's a Brenda bush. Now, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the movie, but what happens is, and the reason the Hills Have Eyes is famous, is that it turns out these hills overlooking the Carter family are full of crazy, half-mutated human cannibals. In the very beginning of the film, they pass a little gas station called Fred's Oasis, where the old man who warns them to stay on the main road is visited by one of these mutants, as I will refer to them from now on, a girl named Ruby who turns out to be his granddaughter. You see, old Fred and his wife had an evil child they named Jupiter. Jupiter was so evil and so bloodthirsty that old Fred hit him in the face with a tire iron and left him in the desert to die. But it turns out that Jupiter kidnapped himself a wife and had himself a passel of children raised up in these hills, slightly deformed, maybe not right, possibly due to the cannibal diet. They have been stopping tourists out here, murdering them, taking their stuff. And as Brenda begins to feel nervous, the mutants, as we'll call them, are looking back down at her from the hills. It's really famous for being one of those genre-defining movies. Breakdown in the desert, watched by creepy hill people. They even did a remake in 2006 that is very, very gnarly. I think it's a little beyond the R rating that it has, to be honest with you. Even the 1977 version is a little gnarly. There's some language, obviously lots of violence, and some forcible touching. It's not for kids. Definitely not for kids, but to the horror movie enthusiasts, it is a big deal. The long story short of the movie, if you haven't seen it, is of course the mutants begin to pick off the Carter family one by one, and eventually they have to take their last stand down here by their trailer, eventually having to become just as savage and violent as the savage, violent hill people in order to survive, and that's sort of the... Now, the remake was filmed in Morocco, and lots of people love to look at satellite images of where that movie was filmed out in the Moroccan desert. And plenty of blogs and commentaries in IMDb and special features have said that this original movie was filmed in Victorville, California. Well, that is false. It's a little bit north and a little bit east of Victorville. Behind me, just over this ridge, actually. Although this place was described as being the middle of nowhere by the filmmakers, if you were to go just over those rocks, you'd actually be able to see the Apple Valley Airport, as well as a massive Walmart distribution center over there. Okay, now that I'm a little to the right, you see that little peak sticking up over that saddle there? That is a very well-known geological feature in this area called Bell Mountain peeking up over there. Back here, we've got Stoddard Mountain, which is just peeking out from behind some of those hills. The Apple Valley Speedway is down there, so I keep hearing go-karts and motorcycles and whoever else is racing around down there. And most importantly of all, when I was watching sort of the finale of the movie where Brenda, spoiler alert again, there's gonna be a lot of spoiler alerts, picks up a hatchet to decimate Papa Jupiter and win the day. Behind her, just for a second, you'll notice the whole mountain is white. That was the other important clue that finally led me to this location, because as you can see, the mountain is still white. It is a very much still active quarry out here. I think this is why, for all that I can tell, we are the first people to ever find and locate the correct Hills Have Eyes location. Isn't because it's in the middle of nowhere, it's because it's actually so close to Apple Valley. There are houses just over these hills, and I can see the Interstate 15 freeway from here. It is so close to civilization that I think people never found it because it was right in front of their face. Now, just a couple of things though before I show you some other spots. Number one, there are crazy amounts of rattlesnakes out here, including the legendary Mojave greens. Two, the ground is absolutely littered in some areas with bullets and shell casings and buckshot, and a lot of people come shooting out here every single day. So make sure that you're visible, that people can see you, that you know who is around you at all times, especially because you'll find a lot of things like this. I know a lot of people, you know, dump trash out here, but seems to be an awful lot of abandoned pants. There can't be that many people running around without their pants and their ropes, just chilling. There are actually people living out here who aren't supposed to be. There are guns out here, there are venomous snakes, so even though you're close to town, it's a dangerous location. It's the desert, bring plenty of water. And now that I've got my many disclaimers out of the way, I can show you in a little more detail this spot, and then we'll go exploring. The main dirt road into this area that the family is driving into this area on as well is called Johnson Road. It's a big, wide dirt road over here just north of the mountain. But where the family actually breaks down is just a little bit to the south on this other little dirt road here, just lined up with that little rocky crag. This was a very low budget movie in the 70s, and it was shot on borrowed 16mm cameras, actually rented, I believe, from an adult filmmaker. And they have very zoomy lenses, not very wide lenses, so everything in the background looks a lot closer than it is. When you watch the movie, it looks like the trailer is really close to those rocks in the background. Oh no, we are at least 100 yards, maybe a little farther. And the way you can find the correct spot for the car to break down is to come down this wide dirt road that heads east from those rocks right there. And then, looking at the hills, you gotta make sure they line up just right. So in the scene where Bobby is starting up the car to trap Papa Jupiter, you can see how the background mountains are just coming out around those rocky formations. That was one point of reference. The other point of reference was where that little hill was popping above the notch when you were looking back at Big Bob, who's standing next to the trailer. And then there's the way Stoddard Mountain lines up between the foreground mountains over here in the direction of the mine. Using these three references, you're able to come along the dirt road just far enough to find this little wash here that runs along the road, creating that dip the back wheels of the station wagon we're in. And Seth has pointed out that the still buried giant root mound of that big bush the car climbed up is right here. So the station wagon literally was on a giant bush, the roots of which are still under this dirt. Its back wheels were in the ditch, the trailer was going up that way. And there's a lot of little trails and dry washes here, but this is sort of the only one in the right spot. So if you line everything up and you find this wash and ditch, you are in the right spot. I'll try to put a accurate GPS coordinate in the description, and then hopefully you guys will be able to find it. Anyway, this is the exact spot where they blew up the Hills Have Eyes trailer. We've only found one sort of kind of likely looking piece of metal, but I doubt it's actually from the movie. Interestingly enough, there's also a little campfire ring right here. Clearly people come out here and camp from time to time. Oh, they wouldn't if they knew who lived up there. It's a little farther where they would have had their campfire at night in the movie. But this is another good landmark to look out for as long as it lasts. All right, so as we've seen from lining up the hills behind, this is where the station wagon was. Bobby's trying to start it up. They blow up the trailer and try and stop Jupiter that way. Brenda has to swing her hatchet into Papa Jupe's chest right over here. This was the area of the finale. But of course, the way they got Papa Jupiter, the leader of the mutants, out of the hills was to lure him out with the body of their own dead mother. I told you, it's a horror movie, okay? Which they placed at some little distance from the trailer towards the hills they knew the mutants were lurking in. Actually, if we leave the truck right here, it shouldn't be too hard to line up. If you come out here, make sure you bring a Seth and at least a 70mm lens. He is setting it up right now, right where Brenda and Bobby, B&B, set up old dead grandma. This is where they brought the poor old lady in the lawn chair, right around here. Brenda's screaming and crying. She does a lot of screaming and a lot of crying in this movie, some justified. The rest also probably justified. And then they head back towards the trailer, having set their trap for Papa Jupiter, who comes right out of the wash at the base of these very rocks. In fact, if we zoom all the way in, there's actually a shot of Papa Jupiter running just out of this exact area towards the camera, just like Seth is doing in his snazzy new Random Land t-shirt, and towards dead grandma, which, as you can see by the way it lines up, was filmed right here. Of course, Papa Jupiter, the leader of the mutants, wasn't born yesterday. He figures this must be some kind of trap. So he's looking around cautiously as he reaches this area, and then his feet get caught by the wire. He lands on the ground right here and then gets dragged off towards the trailer. Now, most of the action in the movie does happen in and around the trailer, so it's largely all in this area. A lot of it at night without really any background to compare it to. But right when they first pull up, the dogs get loose, especially the female dog, Beauty. Bobby goes running after her, and that location is actually around the corner of these hills, just a little bit to the south. As a matter of fact, you can see Bobby in the movie running past these rocks and along the dry wash towards this canyon back here that I like to call Dog Canyon. Now, when you get to Dog Canyon, you'll know because it's so broken up and cool looking. It looks a lot smaller on camera than it does standing here in person. These are massive rocks. It's not the first one, it's the second one. In fact, there's a shot almost just like this of Bobby running into the canyon, and you can actually see some of the very same rocks from then to now, still in the same position, which means this is the exact canyon Bobby was going after Beauty in. Beauty! Here's some more rocks that lined up behind where Bobby was yelling for Beauty. It's been a little bit of erosion, a little bit of change, but this is the canyon he runs up after the dog. Of course, there's a lot of shots of Beauty charging up this and going between all the rocks. through all the different boulders and lots of shots of Bobby crawling between stuff and climbing over stuff as well. Yesterday I got a pretty good cactus needle, actually 3, directly up through the shoe and into the foot. Not for stepping on the cactus, but just the ones that were on the ground. So wear appropriate hiking shoes, which I didn't. Left them in the car. Anyway, Bobby makes his way up over this last little obstacle and into this bowl-like area here. And this is basically where he stops, yelling, "Beauty!" and hearing strange noises from up there. Beauty's barking, eventually whimpering, there's some strange sounds, and then Bobby, also now with that eerie feeling of being watched, because as you know, the hills have eyes, starts to make a mad dash further up Dog Canyon, dude, which is quite a climb in real life. Not as easy as Bobby made it look. There's a lot of quick cuts in here that are difficult to match up, but I believe Bobby climbs up this kind of vertically, and then when he finally climbs out of all that stuff to the highest bowl possible, and I mean it is way up here, scrambling over huge stuff, but way up at the tippy top you'll notice that little crack. That's where Bobby makes his way through and eventually spots the dead and, spoiler alert again, gutted form of his once beloved dog Beauty. There's some pretty serious climbing spots with a lot of rat dung and other stuff you don't want to put your hands in. So you may want to bring a mask, definitely gloves, if you want to be prepared for this, but this is it. Beauty Canyon. And Bobby runs back down the canyon like a madman. He trips and falls, bumps his head. They don't see him again until nighttime. Once you've been out here for a while, every rock starts to look the same, and you're basically looking for rocks that match up with other rocks. The most famous rock, of course, would be the actual mutant lair, which should be somewhere up here. In the story, in the movie, they climb and climb and climb before they get to the mutant lair. And we spent, what, 8 hours, 6-8 hours looking for it yesterday. Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't exactly locate the mutant's lair under the boulder. We can't find anything that matches the finale here. So we're going to hike up to the high country and see if anything matches. Even in the shade now with the sun going down, still a little bit sweaty out here in the desert. We have made it now to the high country. There's a bunch of little bats flying around. Oh yeah, it only took like, I don't know, 30 minutes to get up here maybe. There's a lot of little tiny spots to line up. Here we are at the very top of the Dog Canyon again, looking down in there. Mutants could be at the very top up here. Mutants could be in any crag, crack, or cranny. Could be right there even. That's not it. Every time I turn the corner, I think I'm gonna uncover the mystery, but the mutants have eluded us. There are Joshua trees up there. This one time. All right, well, nothing matched up in the high country, and now, unfortunately, the sun is going down, so I think that's all we can actually accomplish today. Well, we have returned to the desert. It's been about 4 or 5 days, and in that time, we have been non-stop searching every aerial photo, every hiker's photo, every rock climber's photo for the additional spots we missed the last time from the hills have eyes. See, the problem was in our original location, nothing looked quite like this. We couldn't find enough large sandy boulders, you know. It was just a little bit different looking, and so it took a lot of searching, a lot of thinking, a lot of Google Earthing, but I figured out that if you come all the way across the dry lake from the mountain we were at before, which is right back out there, Fairview Mountain, you reach another set of strange rocky hills. From the other side, this rocky mountain is actually next to a sort of smoother mountain, so we were calling it Jekyll Hyde Mountain, you know. It appears to be an extension of either the Granite Mountains or Sidewinder Mountain, but the USGS maps have no name for this little particular area. Therefore, we have decided to call it the Craven Hills, after good old Wes Craven. And I'm not gonna toy with your emotions, my friends. We did it. We came all the way past Fairview Dry Lake and up the base of the Joshua Tree studded hill into the Craven Hill Crags. And it actually took us finally using all four wheels with that four-wheel drive, but we made it to the location of Finale Valley. All right, so where we're at in the story, you remember the little baby gets kidnapped by the mutants, and then Doug, the dad of the baby with the mustache guy, must go and rescue the baby. He finds the mutant lair, gets the baby back with the help of Ruby, the good mutant, and then runs away from Mars, the crazy aggressive mutant with the big knife. They have a whole chase scene, and that was all in this area of the Finale Valley. Now, of course, like any action sequence, it's sort of a mix, a grab bag of they're running here, then they're running over here. It doesn't exactly follow a set pattern, but all the shots are right along this nameless ridge, which I'll have to give you GPS coordinates for because there's no name. All right, so Ruby, the good mutant, she's the one who grabs the baby to escape with it. Meanwhile, Doug, the baby's father, is coming down this hill here to meet up with Ruby. You can see the very steep dirt hill they were on, much harder to run down than it looks like it would be, and the foreground rocks perfectly lining up with those background crags in Craven Hills. And working on this project, we probably watched this movie, I don't know, 100 times between the two of us, and it all looked a lot flatter up here than it is in real life. It's very steep. Next, as Doug hits the bottom of that hill, he meets up with Ruby and grabs his baby. That handoff happens right at the bottom of the hill facing this direction. You can still see the rocks in the background looking towards the northwest. Look almost identical today as they did 43 years ago when they filmed the movie. Unfortunately, the baby isn't safe yet because Mars is coming to catch up with them from right over the hill. Again, this is one of those times where you have to take these little tiny rocks in the foreground, line them up with the way all the peaks look in the background to get the perfect angle to see Mars coming for revenge. Oh my goodness, look at the way that matches up. Dude, that's insane. This is why we couldn't give up with just that other day, because we found all the white bread family spots, as Wes Craven called the Carter family, but we didn't have any of these awesome mutant shots, really. And let's face it, no offense to Bobby or Brenda, but the mutants are vastly more interesting characters, at least more interesting looking. Anyway, then the scene cuts back to Ruby and Doug and Katie the baby, and back to Mars, getting a lot closer now, pretty much the same angles each time. And when you're watching the movie, it cuts way back over there to Pluto, Jupiter, the dog scenes, and when we catch back up with Doug and Ruby, they're actually down the hill further. So they started up here where they met up with the baby and end up in this lower wash area where almost the entire rest of the movie takes place, except for one other weird shot shown up here where good old Dougie Fresh chucks a rock right at Mars's face and Mars takes a tumble down the hill. The way we can tell it was shot from up here is, even though it's hard to line up because the camera's in motion, they are tracking past all of these different rock formations from this angle. What I mean by that is if you take it down into kind of slow motion, and again, it's hard to match because both of them are handheld shots, you can see the way the foreground rocks in the background are lining up against the hills far behind them in the distance. So this is the correct area. Afterwards, there's actually another angle of him sliding down this very same hill where Doug met Ruby. And trust me, after walking on this stuff in real life, the last thing you'd want to do is slide down it. These people suffered for their art. Anyway, as I was saying, the next shots really are down there. Those were just a fluke added in to the rest of the chase scene, which begins with them running up out of this wash right here. Dude, look at this. This is incredible. It matches up perfectly. Dude, it is amazing to think this is the exact area that Doug and Ruby and Katie the baby were running up through this stuff, which is much steeper and thicker and nastier and spinier in real life than you would ever guess. No wonder the actors in interviews always complain about how hardcore the desert was. I can see civilization. It isn't as far as they all made it sound like it is, but it is as nasty. Whew. Yeah, the way I found this location and figured out that they shot the second half of the movie over the creek was because there was nothing this tall in the background. Anyway, they're coming up this crag. Mars is in hot pursuit. Weirdly, if you turn this way, these rocks in the background match up to the scene where Doug hands the baby back to Ruby so that he can fight old Mars, who is running up just behind me in a shot that you can see lines up right there. And then in the movie, this would be where Doug jumps up. Dougie Fresh hits the guy in the face. He tumbles down the hill, but that was shot, of course, way up there, where you see our dad's poor beat up truck is hanging out. Anyway, Doug jumps on top of Mars. Mars does that tumble, which was filmed up there. And then next we see Doug make his getaway around this boulder. And this was another clue to the correct location, because if you look way down in the valley below them, you see those rocks sticking up like teeth. They are still here today, and there was nothing like that in our former location across the valley where the trailer was. So this was a dead giveaway. You'll also notice that back in 1977, there were no homes, not a lot of trees and stuff out there, where today we can see a ton of buildings. Things have definitely changed out here. After Doug leaps off that boulder with Mars right behind, he ends up chucking another rock at Mars's face. But at least this one was smaller, and that was shot right over here. You can see the way all the rocks and the peaks of Craven Hills line up right behind Doug's head, and they are still looking exactly the same. Mars is down for the count, and Doug scrambles back down, and next we have a scene of them running up at the wash on the other side of the boulder. Even though we just saw Doug going around one of those boulders here, we next catch up with him down in the wash, running the opposite direction. Mars chases him up the wash and along the edge of those big, tall, smooth cliff faces. It's a handheld shot, so again, difficult to match up. One thing that you'll notice right away, though, especially once you're standing down in it, is how much the plants have grown. So all the boulders back there are still the same, but this bush is big time blocking out some of the scene. However, one of the cool things is you can just kind of see this crack in a shot above Doug. It's really brief, but as he makes his way along here running, you can actually see this exact little plant and this exact little crack and this exact little spot. Look at this little bush. That, my friends, is a Doug bush. All right, now this is where things get crazy, guys, because next Doug comes into this little wedge you see right here. If you remember the movie, this is the way you get to that spot where he's cornered by the rattlesnake, cornered by Mars, and there's the whole finale. This doesn't look like it matches, and that's because it doesn't. You actually have to scramble up this huge boulder and over to the other side, make a right turn, and it'll all start making sense. All right, there goes Seth climbing up and around. Look at this as we round the corner. That is the Rattlesnake Crack. The weird thing is, though, is that in real life it looks like this, but in the movie, they have flipped it backwards, like mirror image. So we also have to flip our modern camera angle to get it to match the movie. No idea why they did that, but apparently they did. It's Wes Craven, man. He knows what he's doing. There's actually another mirror image shot where Mars is standing right in front of this little heart-shaped hole in the rock. And if you flip this, it lines up pretty closely with the clip from the movie. Dude, that is so freaky and weird. One of the hills have eyes. Mutants was standing right here. Whoa, right by that fly. I thought it was a cannibal. Anyway, so remember that it's mirror imaged, but this is exactly where Doug runs down this crack, just like Seth is about to. There he goes. As you can see, I mean, it's quite a distance back there, and it's a huge rock he climbs over, just like Doug does in the film. Then we see Mars coming past this cleft in the rock and making his way up. And what Doug has done is climbed over this, and not under the huge rock, but under this other angled rock. He drops himself down to take shelter, just like Seth is about to do. Just a little bit to the right of the camera, and then they had a little bit more zoomy of a lens that I'm holding, but he drops himself right in here and sets the knife down on the ground you see behind Seth where there's that little crack. Then there's a reverse shot of Mars right down there as the rattlesnake traps Doug. And he says, "You got yourself trapped right where they breed, boy." And poor Doug is pretty much trapped in here under this rock with a snake between him and the only weapon he had, which was the cannibal knife. Luckily, just behind Mars over here in the reverse shot, Ruby makes an appearance, distracts him, allows Doug to escape and begin to fight with Mars. And that's when, in one of the most famous scenes in the whole movie, Ruby grabs the rattlesnake, a Mojave green supposedly, and uses it as a weapon on her own brother Mars. She has gone from savage to joining the side of civilization, which then immediately becomes savage as Doug begins to stab Mars with the knife. role reversal. Weird. Anyway, even though this is the canyon or the little slot that Doug was hiding in under that rock back there with the rattlesnake, this is not actually where that final confrontation rattlesnake bite and stabbing takes place. To see that, you actually have to go back out, climb through all those boulders again, and back into that wash we just saw before they got in here. And that is where you will be able to line up the place that Mars perished. So remember there was that shot of Doug running up through the wash being chased. You actually go back down that wash the same way he was coming from, and then you eventually reach this spot with this big boulder, and this is the exact boulder in front of which Ruby bent down to pick up the rattlesnake. And she then approaches the two combatants who were located just in front of this other rock in the wash here that still matches up perfectly if you freeze it. Which means that this spot in the wash right here is where Mars met his end by way of rattlesnake and then Doug's savage knife. Again, it's not a kids movie, it's a horror movie. In fact, when the movie first came out, they wanted to give it an X rating just for violence. There's no nudity, only a little bit of swearing in the beginning. By today's standards, it's like a pretty gnarly PG-13, maybe a medium, a schmedium R. But back then, man, this was brutally violent and it all went down right there. This is amazing, man. There are a lot of horror movie fans who would love to be standing right here. Dude, I would not lay in that cactus needle ground for anything. You know me, man, normally rolling on the floor, licking stuff, just getting excited, that's fine, but this is so sharp. I mean, my pants are full of needles, and no way, dude, those guys were hardcore. Anyway, this was it. I don't know if you can see, but our white truck is way up there. That's where we started filming, and pretty much all the scenes we've been looking for have been vertically up and down the mountain right in this little area. So I'll give you some rough GPS coordinates for this stabby finale, and between the first one and the last one, you should be able to find the spot if you are brave enough to venture out to where the hills have eyes. We've been bitten by flies, stabbed by cactus. We have been scraped by rocks, burned by the sun, nearly shot at by well-meaning enthusiasts the other day, and sketched out by squatters. It took 19 years for me to hone in on the rough general area of the filming location, and then now two and a half weeks of pretty much constant searching and coming back and forth to the desert for us to find all of this. Seems pretty crazy for a low-budget 1977 horror film that, let's face it, very few people are actually that obsessed with. But you know what? It was one heck of a treasure hunt, and I gotta say, it's been worth it. And we're not quite done yet. For one thing, Michael Berryman's Pluto, my favorite of the cannibals, died on the other side of the valley, we believe, back towards where we originally started this episode. So we're gonna try to make our way over there before the sun sets, because let's face it, Pluto is the best, and he's literally the poster child. And because we never found the mutant lair, that giant boulder, which we suspect is over on this side and not the Fairview Mountain side, we're just cruising past all these rock formations one last time, hoping that we spot it. But if not, I guess it leaves something for the next explorer out here. Yeah, we did make a pretty wide search for what we could see from the road, but the sun is going down now. So if the mutant lair is in the Craven Hills over here, we're gonna have to leave that one for other explorers or another day, because we want to head across that dry lake and get to the place we're pretty sure Pluto met his end at the hands of the beast. All right, as you can see, the shadows are getting long. We're back underneath Fairview Mountain here, really close to that illegal human habitation I was telling you about. So we're sort of sneaking around behind them. What we're doing is coming in along the edge of this steep wash, one of the only washes with sides steep enough to be the correct spot that Pluto meets his end. He is running over here with Papa Jupiter. They come out of the hills into this very deep sandy wash. Keep in mind there's 40 years of flash floods, giant boulders washed into here, plant growth, but this fork between two washes is the place that Papa Jupiter and Pluto run past Beast, who is hiding just up there. This is awesome. I mean, this is cool, dude. I've always been a huge fan of Michael Berryman as Pluto. definitely the most watchable character in the whole thing. This is just so cool to be here. Now up on this hill, where we really don't have time to climb because of the sun, there is an over-the-shoulder shot of Papa Jupe and Pluto looking down the wash. You can actually see the Y in it, so we're in the right spot. That's what gave away the shape of it, but I think we're gonna fly the drone up to that because we are really, as you can tell, losing sunlight. There are people living way too close for comfort. We found a lot of burned out cars and stuff on the way here. Reminds me of the remake of Hills Have Eyes where they find the crater with all the abandoned cars in it. Ooh. Look at it though. This is the wash. And you see Pluto turn around a bunch of times. He's sniffing. The family's so feral, he can almost smell the dog. Man, this is awesome. Whoa! Bunny. It's the first life we've seen all day, as long as it ain't snakes. It's interesting to me because we have come a long way down this wash from the beast hideout Y and the over-the-shoulder shot that they got. They really used a whole lot of this terrain. It's a lot more spread out than you'd think. You really need GPS coordinates in a day or two to really see it all. Oh man, if only we had a little more light. Searching for anything in a wash is tricky because the one place that definitely changes the fastest in the desert is anything sandy with a lot of erosion like this. Boulders come all the way from the highlands. The Joshua trees that once were on the edge of the shot where Pluto dies are clearly gone. We've been looking for any that match, but at some point he's pointed right towards that mountain, right where you can see the moon rising, and somewhere in this very sandy wash, my favorite one of the cannibals, Pluto, meets his maker. That is just so crazy. Just struggling in the sand. Wow. That's wild. All right guys, it was a pleasure to uncover and rediscover the lost filming location for the original 1977 Wes Craven, The Hills Have Eyes. But, as you can see by all this refuse here, we want to be gone by dark because we are back once again on the very sketchy side of the valley. Look, there's pieces of trucks and chairs. That is a kick drum. Trust me, no drummer throws away a kick drum, even a broken one. So, before we become the next victims of the Jupiter family. Oh, a toilet, finally, somewhere to go to the bathroom. We're gonna make our way out of this something forsaken desert. Ooh, look, a license plate number. Anyone missing that license plate? Well, you know what happened to your truck. The Random Land Frights t-shirts are back, so are the hats. You can see Seth here is modeling the new Random Land Fantasy Shield shirt. Ooh, and the new Frights pins are here too, which glow in the dark. We're really gonna need that if we run out of sunlight, so. There's the moon. And the other day when we were out here and we thought we were done, we filmed a much better outro than I think I'm capable of doing at the moment. Anyway, we're late to go see our aunt, so I'll jump you back to the old outro. For now, you've done your duty. Go home and sleep well. There's a lot of other stuff I wished we could have lined up while we were out here, but as you can see, there's still a lot of smoke in the air from the California wildfires and arson fires and lightning fires and all kinds of fires. And if you really listen, you can hear a lot of firing behind us. Looks like it was those guys' turn, Seth. I think it was their turn. I'm glad they're shooting right at the mountains where we were, so I'm glad they noticed us as we made our way out. Oh, I'd like to point out that Seth is wearing the new sweet Random Land t-shirt. Much softer, very nice. Ooh. I've been wearing the old Random Land Fright shirt, but I was wise enough to bring with me a new fresh Random Land shirt in case I got sweaty, which I did. So look at this. Now we match. See, matching is cool. Two matching brothers. That's about all we can do out here, you guys. You can hear the gunfire. They're shooting at us, for goodness sakes. So I believe we found it. Now it's up to somebody else to carry the torch until we come back again and finish the job. But for now, we've done our duty. We can go home, if we can get out of here alive, and sleep well. Enjoy the sunset. Bye-bye. watching brothers in the desert, listening to gunfire and having such a time. Doing a mutant dance, scooty pooty, mutant dance, scooty pooty, mutant dance. Whoa. All right, I was just about to say, I can now show you where the opening credits are. It's supposed to be morning in the opening credits. But they're right down here at the rocks, which weirdly enough, I was looking up there and just thought I saw a person walking around. Maybe there's some more hikers out here. To get the correct hills from the opening credits, the correct craggy crevices and whatnot, you have to come over here a little past where the trailer was to those cracks and hills behind Big Bob. And of course, if it were morning light, they would be all lit up. But if it's dark or almost dark, you get them in silhouette, just like in the movie. So fun fact for you, it ain't morning, that's nighttime. I'll show you what I mean. See? There you go. The camera zoomed in at the top of these hills and slowly pans across and down. Every time you think it's gonna run out, just like this, in the credits, it starts going up again on the other side and gets these bad boys before fading in to the Fred's Oasis gas station, which, by the way, was also somewhere out here. Somewhere out in that desert vastness. This mountain right here is behind Ruby's Head when they blow up, Grandpa Fred's truck. So it was somewhere inside of one of these mountains. All right, anyway, Seth's waiting in the truck. He's hungry, I'm hungry. Time to go home and see the boy, see Allie. This has been multiple days of sweating, wearing the same clothes, and borrowing our dad's truck, who probably would like his vehicle back. Sorry, Dad, it's not scratch-free, but look, he's the one driving. Blame Seth. Blame Seth. We're lining up rocks in the desert on a mountain full of rocks, and Seth looks so serious. He's just taking it so seriously.
Well, you gotta get it right.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's just funny because the look on your face is like we're looking for our grandpa's long-lost grave. It's just funny. Here's a little behind the scenes for you guys. Look at this. Got the iPad with our movie shots. It's just still hard to see out here, so we should have printed them. Seth is lining it up, eyeballing it in the camera. You got a tripod to make sure you get it really nice and stable. We have wind mics, we have water, we have covering. Ladies, I just want to point out that my brother Seth, who is a Spartan race guy, he's very fit and buff. When he takes his shirt off, it's not like me. People are impressed, they don't run away screaming. Anyway, he is very single and ready to mingle. He's a catch, I promise you. It sounded really creepy the way I said that. I never loved water so much in my whole life. Oh my gosh. Seth, there's a glove. Smell it. Smell the glove.
Michael Jackson's missing glove?
No. Down out of the hills, right in front of the dead grandma. I don't like saying that. I wish, is there a better way of saying dead grandma? I guess she's dead mom, which sounds even worse, or dead grandma. Oh man.
If you file and say there was all kinds of feces and urine up there?
Yep.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Okay, so you recommend gloves, yeah?
And maybe a respirator?
Okay, one final thing, guys. Over here there is a slab. There used to be a house right by the Hills Have Eyes, probably built and torn down long before they filmed the movie. And look what's on top of it. It looks better from the air. If you get straight above it with a drone, or even if you look at the Google, satellite image, it's a hidden Mickey. This guy follows me everywhere I go. Mickey. Look, Seth, a Mickey! Mickey! Let's stay here all night, never get you any food, and look at it forever.
Oh no, I'm hungry.
What?
I'm hungry.
What?
I'm hungry.
Oh! You're happy?
Oh.
Good. Wait, what was that? Look, there's the Walmart distribution center. There's the airport. I told you, we're right in civilization. So weird. It's been hiding in plain sight all the time. What'd you say?
Let's get some Doritos from the home.
Wait, I keep hearing a noise over here. Like someone's watching us. Someone from the hills. Maybe it's just a psychological association with the movie. And I did see someone, I thought I saw someone in the silhouette moving around. I really feel like we're not by ourselves. Hello? Hello? Who was out there? Ah!